All right, welcome to the second podcast of Financial Revelations. Be posted on a Friday every week. We're going to post on a Friday. We like posting on Fridays because I know probably you want to review it over the weekend, maybe take some notes, jot down some ideas for your investing or just some ideas for next week. So we're going to post these on a Friday. As of today, today is November 19th. As of November 19th, the election, the presidential election, and the election for the control of the Senate, a little bit up in the air. Joe Biden still considered president-elect. My gut tells me that some of these court cases are going to go up to the Supreme Court. So it might be a little bit of time before we know exactly what's happening, but I would expect to see clarity by mid to late December. I'm hoping before Christmas we see that, but there's no guarantees because there's a lot of court cases from several different states. Now, we do know that there's an election coming up in the state of Georgia for 2 Senate seats that went to a runoff. Ideally, divided government, if Joe Biden does win the president election and you have a Democrat-controlled House and a Republican Senate, the market's going to like that. It'll be good for the market in some sense because nobody has 100% control. And I think the market could accept that outcome. With positive vaccine news that we're getting almost on a daily basis right now, where we have 2 companies now that have a vaccine of 95% efficient. So that means that 95% of the people that have taken this vaccine have avoided COVID. Well, that is going to be a good thing. And the market's going to love that because the things that didn't work in 2020 because of COVID will probably start working again in 2021. Maybe not in January. This is kind of like Missouri. It's the show me vaccine, right? We want to see it working. We want to see the recovery. It's very important to the economy. It's very important to our psyche to see this work. And it happened at record speed. They called it warp speed when they were developing the vaccine, and that's exactly what happened. So that's going to be very accretive to the market. It's going to push companies that did not perform well in 2020. They are going to probably perform much better in 2021. And what happens in investing, what we do is we say, well, what did you do this quarter last year? So first quarter of 2020, how did that look against the first quarter of 2021? And are we seeing an uptrend? And if we see the uptrend, then the stock is going to go up in value. So we want to look for those things. So all of this stuff is going on. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of stuff that we have absolutely no control over. But what I want to talk about today is something that we do have control over, something that you have a lot of control over. In fact, without you, nobody controls it. So what I want to talk about is how what I see at this time of year, there's a couple times of year where I see people totally blowing their budgets. They have a budget, they're living on a budget, they understand their finances, and then all of a sudden it's like somebody pushed the plunger and a bomb went off in the middle of their finances and they've lost control. So I want to help us not fall victim to that process. So one of the times that I see people blow their budget is on a vacation. So maybe it's a last minute vacation or they've had a plan for a while and they just haven't done a good job of managing their expenses at the vacation. So maybe they go to a place like Disney or Cedar Point or overseas. And while they're there, all of a sudden, all these things start creeping in. So this is a time, especially with the uncertainty that we have, and we're going to have for some time, I want us to be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves, just like Matthew 10:16 says. So I'm going to go all Santa Claus on you guys, okay? The first step in controlling our budget is we're going to be like Santa Claus. We're going to make a list, and we're going to make a lot of lists. So we're about to go through Thanksgiving. It's going to look different for a lot of people this year. But one thing's in common with everybody, we're going to spend money on it. So there's going to be food, there's probably going to be gifts and things like that. There's going to be maybe some outfits or whatever it is that you do. What I want you to do when you go into Thanksgiving, when you go to the store, I want you to have a list written down on a sheet of paper or in your phone. A lot of people like their phone. You could have a list in your phone, but I want you to look at that and I want you to stick to it. So, maybe you're not cooking for as many people this year as you would have last year. Highly likely, especially in some states you're not allowed. But you want to buy the same amount of stuff almost, so you got to pare that back. This is a great time to make this list, this holiday list for Thanksgiving. When you go to the store, don't buy more than what you need. Contrary to popular belief right now, you do not need 200 rolls of toilet paper. You don't need it. There's going to be toilet paper. Don't worry about things like that. So make your list. Now with Christmas, because the moment Thanksgiving is over, Black Friday starts. And a lot of those deals are out right now because stores are trying to lengthen this process because not a lot of people are going to stores. Christmas this year, this is a great time to pare things back a little bit. Realize this is not a time to be extravagant. This year is not a time to be extravagant. So what I want you to do, maybe it's time for a family meeting where we sit down and we say, look, this is not going to be a Christmas like other years. And I know nothing has been normal about this year. Education hasn't been, work hasn't been, travel hasn't been. So we want to bring some certainty to our families' lives, but not at the expense of our budget. So what I want you to do is I want you to come up with a dollar amount that's reasonable that you're going to spend for the family, and then I want you to stick to it. And again, the best way to do that is with a list written down on a piece of paper. When you write things down, a couple of things happen. One, you have it kind of codified on a piece of paper for yourself. That's what I'm going to do. And then secondly, when you write something down, it tends to stick more in our heads because we've looked at it, we've written it, we maybe even spoke it out loud. Sit down with your spouse, go over these things with them, decide how much you want to spend, and then stick to it. And it's okay to spend a little bit less this year. In fact, paring things down that we're doing right now is probably a good idea because we are about to go through some more lockdowns. Chicago's doing it, California's doing it, New York's doing it. Ohio, you can't be out after 10 o'clock without a good reason. For me, there's no good reason to be out after 10 o'clock at my age. So they could have set that curfew at 8 o'clock, and I think I would have been fine with it. But we're going to go through some more lockdowns. It's just a fact of what's going to happen. Now, first quarter, maybe even in December, we're going to start seeing these vaccines, and things are going to start to loosen up a little bit. But until then, I want us to be tight. I want us to be tight with our budget. I want us to be wise with our money. And the list is the number one thing that we could do to get there. The next thing that I want you to do is because we're paring things back a little bit. We're not going to spend as much at the store. I want you to bolster your emergency fund. And I can't tell you how many people I talk to don't have an emergency fund. So they don't even know what an emergency fund is. And what an emergency fund is to me is it's money sitting aside in a bank someplace, okay, where you have access to at a moment's notice. Now, maybe if your car broke on a Saturday night, you're going to use your credit card to get it fixed, and then you're going to pay that with your emergency fund. But don't be afraid to bolster your emergency fund. So there's a couple things that we're really trying to do with the holiday budget. We're trying to stay away from panic or emotional buying. It's really easy to get emotional right now because it's a rough time. We're trying to get you to do a written list, okay? And I want you to realize, I want you to think about this thing. One of my favorite resources in finance has always been Larry Burkett. Now, Larry's been deceased for quite a while now, but his words ring true today as they ever have. We all have to decipher between needs, wants, and desires. A need is something that we have to have. You need water, right? You need water to live. If you go 3 days without water, your body starts to shut down. So that is a need. You need housing. You need a roof over your head. We want Evian water because it tastes good and it's $5 a bottle. We want a really nice house. Okay, so there's a difference there. You don't need to have a really nice house. We want one. And then there's things that we desire. Desires are things that are, for a lot of people, they're about greed. I desire Lamborghinis. My wife will not let me have one. Now, if I got it in red and it wasn't a convertible, I'd probably get away with it. She'd never notice. However, I'm not going to do that to her. I've learned my lesson. So I desire a Lamborghini. I'm probably never going to have one. That's okay. But that's a desire of mine. And you have desires too, but they're not really about things that we have to have or we need to have. They're things that we want to have. I want those things totally out of my budget this Christmas. I just don't want them in there. And I don't want them in there for you too, because we might need that emergency fund. We might need it to be a little bit higher than normal right now. One thing that we learned in 2008 is that you could do everything perfect. You could have all your bills paid, run no credit card debt. You could do all those things. You could have a great emergency fund. And even then, it might not be enough. And a lot of people found that out in 2008. So I don't want to make the same mistake twice for my people. I want you to have a healthy emergency fund. And then when things start to settle down a little bit next year, we can come back and we can invest some of that money. We could lower the emergency fund a little bit if you feel comfortable doing that, put some of that money to work. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is I want you to avoid paying for Christmas all the way through June of next year. Nothing upsets me more than when somebody walks in and they make, let's say, $75,000 a year, and they sit down and they have $35,000 in credit card debt. That is a tough pill to swallow. And it's a hard bill to pay. It's almost half of your income. I can't tell you how many times I have seen this, and it's upsetting. And the first question I always ask people is, how did it get here? What was it that caused this? And I see things like vacations, Christmas, special occasions, things like that. I don't want you to be there, okay? We could be way wiser with our money than running up these big credit card bills. There's a simple philosophy that one of the wisest people about finances ever taught me. It's my wife, LaVon. She's very wise with money. She's very good with money. She's very frugal. So we had just gotten married, and I had got my credit card bill in the mail, and we were renting an apartment at the time in Elyria, Ohio. And she said, "Oh, what's your credit card bill?" And I said, "Oh, it's whatever it was. I don't even remember now." I said, "I'm just going to pay the minimum." And she looked at me like I had three heads. And she said, "No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to pay that credit card bill off every month, every single month, forever." We have done that for our entire married life. We've been married more than 28 years. We have never run credit card debt. So if the bill is 58 cents, we pay it. If it's $5,800, we pay it. If it's $25,000, we pay it, because we're always blocking out the money from our checking account when we use it. And so we don't go out and spend frivolously on things and not tell each other. But the moment you cannot pay your credit card bill off at the end of the month, alarm bells should be ringing in your head. And the next thing that should happen is you should put your credit card away. Put that credit card away until that bill is paid off. And then set up a discipline that when there's a bill for the credit card, it gets paid 100%, or it doesn't get used until the bill's paid. If you could do those two simple things, you will never run into credit card problems. If you refuse, and that's what it would be refusing to do those things, then you're probably always going to suffer from credit card problems. And I don't want to see you do that. You think about all the interest that we pay to credit card companies. If you pay your bill off every month in full, you pay no interest. And that's where I want you to be. So I want you to have a great holiday. I want you to have a great Thanksgiving. I'm looking forward to it. I love Thanksgiving. The thing that I love most about Thanksgiving is the nap after the meal, because I don't sleep any better than I do for those 2.5 hours, sometimes 3.5 hours, with turkey and stuffing and gravy and pie. I'm looking forward to it. So I hope your Thanksgiving is a blessed Thanksgiving. Look for other people that we can reach out to. And I want you to send me questions. I need your questions. I want to answer questions at david@epsf.com. david@epsf.com. And it's probably right here, right now. Somewhere right around here, that email address is going to pop up. I want you to use it. You know, if you have a question about anything else, I want you to email. I'm never going to put your name on the podcast or on the radio or anything like that. It'll be confidential. But the questions that you have, probably a lot of people have those. So don't be afraid to ask them. It's going to be anonymous unless you tell me that I could use your name. Otherwise, I will never say your name on a podcast or the radio. I love you guys. Thanks for listening, and God bless your holiday. Thank you.